Hey everyone, it's Pastor Colin with your daily word. This week, some of the pastors are answering this question, who is God to me? And answering a similar question, how do you come to know God? How did I come to know God? It's a difficult question, though it's simply stated in just a few words, who is God to me? It's deep because on one hand, it's autobiographical. It brings in your story about how you encountered God in the world through others or through nature, or through experience or study or reading. But also it brings to account those philosophical and theological conversations you have about the attributes of God. Who is God? What is God like? How can we even know God? What sorts of tasks do we have to complete to know more about God? If God is incomprehensible, can we know anything about God? Those deep questions. So in that one question, who is God to me? You have your personal story and also kind of a difficult debate that's been going on for centuries. For me, personally, when I say God, I mean Father, Son, and Spirit, the doctrine of the Trinity. When I say God, I'm talking about the God that took on flesh in Jesus. For me, when I say God, I'm not saying some distant person or figure out somewhere in the universe that's just other than we are, but the ground of all reality, of all existence, of all creation. And not just that, not just distant and other and powerful and holy and just and love disembodied, but embodied in the person of Jesus. When I say God, it's always inclusive of the person of Jesus, this first century Palestinian rabbi named Jesus of Nazareth, who taught people and was a great moral teacher, but was more than that, was God in the flesh, as we say at Christmas time, Emmanuel. In my own story, in my own calling to ministry, but also in my own beginning of belief, I felt that in reading the story of Jesus as he called the disciples, he was also calling out to me. And that's how you come to know God. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing of the word of God, what God speaks into the world. And that's how I experience God and how I come to know God daily. Is by hearing from God and hearing through the teaching and word and experience and life and resurrection of Jesus. I think Karl Barth sums it up for me well. He says that God, yes, is the most high, but not in contrast to that, but actually as part of that, God is the most high in his descending. God is high and other than we are and mighty and powerful, not by being apart from us, but in the fact that he did come to us in the person of Jesus. Likewise, in the first chapter of Colossians, in the 15th verse through the 19th verse, it says this: "The Son is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn over all creation. For in him all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or powers or rulers or authorities, all things have been created through him and for him. He is before all things, and in him all things hold together. And he is the head of the body, the church. He's the beginning and the firstborn among the dead, so that in everything he might have the supremacy. For God was pleased to have all his fullness dwell in him." To me, as Colossians says, it's not that Jesus showed one piece of God, one part of God, one facet of God's existence, but the fullness of God exists in Jesus Christ. I'm going to leave you with this image as we come to our own understandings of who God is and how we experience him in the world. Something we can learn from the Hindu religion. People that practice Hinduism, one of the practices they do is if they have an icon or a statue of one of the gods they worship, they, in a dark room, go up to that statue with a small lit candle and shine the light on one part of the statue. And they recognize that as they shine the light on one part of the statue, they see only in part. And once they move it, the part they once saw, they now can't see as well, and they can only see another part. I think we can learn something from that, in that we'll never fully see at one moment all of who God is. But we can draw close to the God who draws near to us in Jesus Christ. And his fullness dwells in him, that we might draw closer, that we might become more holy and be more like him because he came to be one of us. That's who God is to me, and I hope you'll reflect on that question this week as we continue in this series in the book of Genesis. Have a great week.